Today we're going to talk about how stiff hips increase extra ache, pressure, or stiffness on our low back, what swing compensations come from stiff hips, and how having stiffness or restriction in our hips can change our ability to be consistent in our golf swing and put extra compression, pressure on our back, leading to pain, stiffness, and injury. So if this sounds like you, this is a great video to get some insight on why these are happening. And then in future videos, we'll talk about what things you can do to address your hips. I'll give you one little tip that you can do in terms of a swing setup that will allow you to have more freedom in your golf swing. So stick around for that. So let's talk about the why. We have 4 main rotary centers in our golf swing, but the 2 biggest are our hips and our torso. If we do not move well from our hips, if we have stiffness, we're going to tend to put extra tension on our knee or our low back to make up for the difference in rotation. So our low back gets more brunt of force and rotation in our golf swing if we know that we're not getting rotation from the place we want. It usually comes from somewhere else, the path of least resistance, and in many cases that's extra tension on the low back. From a golf standpoint, so how does this affect your swing, your ability to be consistent? Well, typically, if we're stiff somewhere, we're going to could adapt a number of different swing faults. One being reverse spine angle, where we start getting our torso back and away, back and toward our target, which creates extra pressure and stretch on this right side, extra compression on this lower left side. Again, if we're doing this repeatedly and we're working on stuff, we can create some irritation there. Number 2, if we have stiffness in our lead hip, we're not able to start rotating, we stall. And when we stall from our lower body, well, our low back and everything else keeps moving. We could put tension there. We may then have to early extend to shallow ourselves out, again, causing pressure or compensation. And then last but not least, the third one would be C, right? Reverse C. So that'd be finishing our left hip, our lead hip is stiff. So then we're just going to fall back and stay away rather than staying through the hip and rotating, right? So we kind of fall back, put pressure on this back leg, and we're going to get compression on the right side of our low back. So this is important for a litany of reasons in terms of consistency, power, transition, stuff that I've done videos on already. The big takeaway here on a short and sweet video is if our hips are not moving well and are stiff, we're going to have to create rotation from other places or rotate better from other places. Our low back tends to be a culprit when we're not rotating well, and over time starts to get achy, stiff, and if we don't ever address the main source of the problem, which could be for you rotation in your hips, then you're going to continue to have issues with being able to play a lot and tolerate a lot of play without getting stiffness in your lower back. One other area we haven't spoken about with any of our videos yet with the stiffness in our hips is how tight we are in the front of our hips. And if our hips are tight in the front, we tend to adopt this position of extra arching of our low back, which continues to create muscle tightness, tension, and it also stops us on our ability to rotate. So that would be a last but not least reason or example of how stiff hips affect your ability to rotate and put extra pressure on your low back. So 2 tips. I've gone through these tips before, but I think they're just great tips to allow you to move better that are in your setup. So tip 1 is if you do have some tightness in your front of your hips, right, you're going to feel like more tension in your low back as well. You're going to be in this position, butt out. So it's nice to try and think about tucking your belt buckle up to the ceiling and then arching and then tucking up to the ceiling again. Just finding a nice neutral position where you have freedom to rotate. So that's number 1. Number 2, another way to get more rotation is to set up with your feet in a better position to allow you to rotate. So if we're too narrow with our stance, neutral, or even forget pigeon-toed, or right, toed in, we're going to have no ability to turn. If we open our feet up, we've got a lot more ability to turn the hips. And again, that allows us to swing more freely, hopefully be more consistent in terms of our vertical displacement, and then more consistent in our ability to get through impact at a consistent depth and low point and make a good strike. So I'm always a big fan of just opening those feet up a little bit, play with you and your anatomy and see what feels most comfortable for you, and play with this belt buckle tip again and see what allows you to rotate better. I hope you found this helpful today. Put a couple of those tips we just went over to use. And if you have questions about how tight your hips are, how they relate to your golf swing specifically, if there's anything that you can do to loosen up a specific hip, reach out to us, comment below, and we'll be happy to help. Thank you, and have a good day.